Kenya Yap to Kehilla's coast-to-coast innovative affordable housing made in Canada solutions with possible export potential. I'm Nancy Singerty, Strategic Director of the Director of Strategic Initiatives, I have to remember my title, at the Kehilla Residential Programme, a nonprofit housing agency and the organizer of this event. I want to start with a land acknowledgement. On behalf of the board, staff, and volunteers of the Kehilla Residential Programme, we would like to acknowledge the original caretakers and storytellers of the land we're hosting this event from, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Wendat First Nations, and all those documented and undocumented, recognized and unrecognized. We are grateful that they cared for the land in such a way that we are able to gather here today. And I invite all of us to consider how we too might each do our part to care for the land and the materials we use to build on it, with something healthy to pass on to the next 7 generations, which for coming. We have a fast-paced program today, so let's get started. I want to acknowledge and thank our lead sponsors, CMHC and Ellis John, and all our industry sponsors. More about them later. Now with great pleasure that I introduce the Honorable Ahmed Hussen, Federal Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development. He's also the minister responsible for CMHC. In reading Minister Hussen's bio, I was completely overwhelmed by all his accomplishments. He could not be more suited to both his previous and current cabinet posts. He intimately knows all the issues, having personally experienced coming to Canada as a Somalian refugee at the age of 16, to being the change agent for Regent Park's revitalization, and recognized as one of Canada's top 10 individuals who has made a significant contribution to the City of Toronto. His career as an immigration and human rights lawyer and 2-term election as the MP for York South-Weston, a community that is home to many immigrants and households challenged by low income and lack of affordable housing, gives him the reality lens. And now, Mr. Hussen, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to all of you. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to join you today from Ottawa on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. Your groundbreaking research helps us to reimagine a future where housing in the city of Toronto is affordable. Thanks also to Ed Applebaum and everyone at Kehilla for hosting this really important discussion. Your programs help thousands of Torontonians, and the impact of your events and insights reach far beyond the city of Toronto. We all know that 2020 has challenged us like no other year, and the year is not even over yet. But the COVID-19 pandemic has also reminded us all that nothing is more important than a home, a place of sanctuary, a place of safety in these challenging times. Pourtant, la pandémie a également mis en évidence les défis auxquels nous faisons face en temps de logement à travers le pays. Yet the pandemic also highlighted our country's serious housing challenges. Those who have been hit hardest by COVID-19 pandemic are our people experiencing or at risk of homelessness, people living in congregate housing, such as seniors, women and children fleeing domestic violence, and people with disabilities. People who are Black, Indigenous, and from other racialized communities have also been disproportionately affected. But even in the midst of this tragic situation, we look for silver linings. The nationwide response to the pandemic has shown just how much can be accomplished when we are laser focused on solving a problem, when we are ready to mobilize and react quickly, and when we're ready to collaborate with current and new partners. Elle démontre ce que peut être accompli lorsque nous innovons avec un objectif. It shows us what can be done when we innovate with purpose. And that is what today's event is all about. Our government wants to help, The most recent example of our government's efforts in this regard is the $1 billion Rapid Housing Initiative, launched just last month. We heard from our partners in cities across the country that we could help meet the pressing housing needs that they face by providing support to build modular housing and purchase land for it, and by renovating and retrofitting existing buildings for affordable housing. So this $1 billion, we've separated it into two envelopes. The first $500 million has been earmarked for the 15 municipalities in Canada that have the highest number of people experiencing homelessness. And the other $500 million is for projects that will be submitted by nonprofit organizations, other municipalities, and indigenous organizations. This will result in the building of 3,000 permanent affordable housing units in less than 12 months. The Rapid Housing Initiative is our most recent program, but I want to stress that all of our programs in the National Housing Strategy were designed to encourage innovation. Our National Housing Strategy includes nearly $56 billion in investments to give more Canadians a place to call home. And as of the end of September of 2020, we've already committed some $10.8 billion to create and repair over 118,000 units and maintain the affordability of 25,000 units of community housing for Canadian families. We couldn't have done this without the enthusiastic involvement and partnership of the nonprofit sector and the private housing sector and all other levels of government. Mais nous avons qu'il y a encore beaucoup à faire. But we know there's still much more work to do. As you look at the innovative housing solutions being showcased today, think about how our programs can support those innovative solutions. As you discuss ideas for future innovations in your conversations today and beyond, consider how we in the Government of Canada can support those initiatives through the National Housing Strategy. So I want to take this opportunity to appreciate everyone's work in affordable housing. Congratulations to everyone involved in the incredible projects being showcased today. Thank you for everything that you do. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you, Minister Hussen. That was really powerful words. And thank you for reminding us all of the importance of home for the many who don't have appropriate homes, and what we're all striving and working very hard to help them achieve. I also have to thank you from Kehilla, because we were probably going to be the recipient of one of the RHI funds to add. I guess I know. Thank you. You know already.
No, housing matters now because of the pandemic, but it's going to continue to matter even after the pandemic. So the work that you do at Kehilla and many other like-minded organizations is the reason we will meet and hopefully exceed our targets in the National Housing Strategy. So we appreciate the partnership and the collaboration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You've made our work so much easier. I think one positive thing I can say about COVID is that it's made us realize without a doubt that housing, mental health, and just health and adequate housing is completely intertwined, whether we're housing the homeless or we're housing aging populations.
Yes.
Where many of us are heading towards as a Canadian demographic. So we've acquired some really important practical information, and as Jay Pitter has put it, it's really an obligation. It's not, I wouldn't call it an opportunity of all of us to address past injustices and to do it properly going forward.
Thank you.
So thank you again. That was great. I also have to recognize Adam Vaughn, who I believe is one of over 700 people right now in the audience whom I can't see. Adam is the parliamentary secretary to the minister, and he's also one of the original drafters of the National Housing Strategy.
Yes.
And as a former city councillor, I work very closely with him. And he's been at, I think, every single Kehilla event. So,
and by the way, I can tell you without Adam Vaughn, without exaggerating, without Adam Vaughn, the Rapid Housing Initiative would not be a reality today. He fought very hard for it. He brought it to the table, and he worked with me to get it across the finish line. across the finish line, even times when we weren't sure it was going to happen. So I am incredibly blessed and honored and privileged to have him as my parliamentary secretary. He's an authority on housing and issues around affordability, and he's a great asset to Canada.
And to us, both of you. You're a formidable team, so thank you.
Thank you.
I now have the pleasure of introducing Jeanhy Shim, today's moderator and host of Kehilla's Movie Modular Forward event last year. Jeanhy works as a strategic development consultant to industry clients through her own company, Housing Lab Toronto. Currently, she's working with the winner of last year's Kehilla's Modular Design Competition to develop a project with her new not-for-profit development company, Crosswalk Communities, to build an affordable housing community for low-income and single-parent families in Rexdale, where she actually resides. Jeanhy grew up as a child of Korean immigrants in North Toronto and studied in Montreal, Washington, D.C., and London, England. She currently lives with her 11-year-old daughter in Toronto. Over her long career, Jeanhy continues to provide a wide range of strategic market analysis and development services to Toronto developers and financial institutions. She's on the boards of Waterfront Toronto and Urban Land Institute, bringing diversity and inclusion to their discussions. Jeanhy will be moderating the panel discussion with the project leads after the video presentations, which will play in a moment. For most of us, this is lunch or time for coffee, and there are no eating restrictions at this virtual event. So please stand by and enjoy the videos. And a lot of effort has gone into preparing them from each of the proponents and project leads and their teams. And also the event is being recorded, so you will receive a recording once, so it's not a one-time show. So thank you so much.
People need to be able to access what is affordable. We need to address the area of poverty. We need to address recreation. We need to have stores in the community. We need to have parking in this community. We need to see vibrancy, and we need to see it for all community members.
The community helped raise me, man, and that's what it comes down to. Where we grew up, it takes a community to raise a young person, and that's what this is all about. Community to raise our young people in a way that ultimately is going to benefit their future. Okay, and yeah, where we come from, it's literally something that we live by. So that whole saying of it takes a community, that is something that is entrenched in the African Nova Scotian community, and I will say that over the generations it has been changing, but we have to bring that back. We have to bring that back, and I'm one of the people who feel that can, because the community did help raise me, and at the end of the day, I ain't ever going to give up on my community. The inspiration behind this initiative comes from the African Nova Scotian Social Innovation Employment Lab, a collective impact strategy bringing the community together with government, nonprofits, and small and medium-sized businesses to work towards one common goal, which in this case is closing the employment gap for African Nova Scotians between the ages of 18 and 35 compared to all categories. The why behind this initiative speaks to the years of anti-Black displacement that has taken place in Halifax over the generations. The focus is on the displacement that took place in the African Nova Scotian community of Africville. Many of the residents were displaced throughout the north end of Halifax, with a major influx of those displaced residing in the Uniacke Square, a community that is currently being gentrified as we speak. This initiative will offset the current gentrification that is taking place in the north end of Halifax, and it will provide a blueprint for reasonable development that encourages and supports the most vulnerable populations in our community.
A community benefit agreement is a tool that's used by progressive municipalities across Canada, around North America, and in fact, around the world. It's not a new tool. It works like this. The municipality who's extending a development agreement to a developer to create commercial or includes certain community benefits into the agreement so that the developer, as part of their opportunity to build new buildings in a community, are committed to supporting through the design, through the build, and through the operational stages of their buildings. Are committed to supporting traditional residents of the community in all kinds of different ways.
This new vision that was created through the consultation of Jono Developments as well as One North End really completely morphed the architecture and the scaling and massing on the site, and really took the design in a completely different direction. Instead of being a purely profit-driven concept which we could build tomorrow, what it's done is it's factored in people, it's factored in the community, the place, and the profit.
Juno recognized that we have to do better. We need to know who it is that we're working with. We need to know, understand, and appreciate who the African Nova Scotian people are. And in that, they joined the group called the African Nova Scotian Lab. They began to work with the members of our community.
My name is Alex Ross, and I have my own business, and my business is called Family Over Fame. When you look on Gottingen with everything that's going on, there's not one black business owner on that street, you know what I mean? So we definitely need to change that, and hopefully we are a part of that change and we're not left behind.
Yeah, so when it comes down to the CBA, there's responsibility for development and the community that they're coming into to ultimately see eye to eye. So I see this as a great mechanism to enable that to happen, and development come together to have a mutually agreeable paper, document that they can come and bring to the city and say, this is what we agree on. It removes a lot of the bureaucracy, a lot of the red tape, a lot of the headbutting that comes along through the consultation process and through the dialogue that happens through the typical way that you'd happen with the city. It's a beautiful thing to see people actually coming together for the future of a site, especially one as critical as this, that means so much to so many people in the area. And if people actually look at the depth of this project and not just judging a book by its cover or looking just at the renderings, and they see the intricacies in it and the thought that was behind it and the actual points that were taken over years of listening and consultation, to see how they're actually incorporated into the drawings, into the buildings, into the actual utilization of the project when it's finished, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. It's going to be there for generations to come, and sustainable, and something everybody's proud of and everybody can utilize, and something that really has a potential to make a change for the community because it means so much to them.
I can see this becoming the start of a really exciting future. It will essentially be the blueprint to how development can work, where people and profits benefit. And I'm really excited and really looking forward to seeing this project move forward and to see the outcomes and the prosperity that should follow.
This site has so much history. It's an integral location and very important to many people, and therefore it has a huge potential to allow great things to happen. How
do we expand Halifax? How do we make Halifax one of the great cities in Canada, in the nation of Canada? How do we put us on the map? Well, you can see that us, HRM, it's absolutely incredible. It's beautiful. We want that too. What is it that we really want? Same thing everybody else wants for their children. A beautiful place to live, work, educate, raise my children. Same thing everybody else wants. And I believe that ultimately this project will be one that we can see ourselves working collaboratively with Juno developers and ultimately have that big smile on our face. Okay, we got it. We live here. You understand us. This is home for everyone. Thank you.
Hello, it's an honor to be invited today by Kehilla, and in particular Nancy Singer, to present our latest affordable housing project here in Montreal called Place Griffintown. Affordable housing cannot just be a challenge on how to build the fastest, least expensive housing project imaginable. It's about listening to your client, listening to the context, so that one can learn and co-construct a shared vision. At LUF, we've been working on this challenge for over 3 decades. So sharing lessons learned has become our trademark. In this image, you can see Frank, Cotovel, introducing students to passive and active systems in their central courtyard. But mostly, community-inspired housing is about a holistic process and doing the right thing. What unites us at LUF Architects is our shared values and our integrated design process. While our diversity in language and culture, education and experience ensure a lively debate on a daily basis, our diversity also nurtures our own health and happiness. Our process at LUF is centered around engaging with our clients from day one, in active listening as we invite the client and key stakeholders to the table to share their hopes and dreams. The openness inspires co-learning. Today, I'll be introducing a particular theme related to our latest affordable housing project called thermal autonomy. Thermal autonomy is a term that Dr. Ted Kessick from University of Toronto has been promoting for several years, and its roots are simply about listening to what was good for centuries, promoting passive design, where a building is in harmony with its exterior environment. So Place Griffintown, with financial assistance from the Société d'Habitation du Québec and the City of Montreal, we are incorporating the principle of passive habitability into the heart of our exterior envelope design. Passive habitability is a measure of the duration of time that an indoor space remains habitable following a prolonged power outage over an extended period of time of extreme weather, either hot or cold. The goal is to attain at least 72 hours. In a paper published a couple of years ago by Dr. Kessick and Dr. O'Brien, they looked at what are the overall R values required for each individual context. Of course, the better the envelope enclosure, the better the passive design. But when hard choices have to be made as to where to best spend money on energy efficiency, the design challenge becomes confusing. The percentage of overall is a big factor, and here in 6. So achieving an overall R value of about 10.6 is a demanding goal, but certainly one that's achievable. But a high performance envelope alone is not enough when it comes to thermal autonomy. We need to include openable shading, natural ventilation as well. The carpet plot here you see shows a scenario in Toronto when a high performance R value, operable shading, and natural ventilation are well balanced, then thermal comfort can be achieved for at least half the year. So I want to walk you through a few of our projects over the years to better understand where LUF is coming from. Back in the early 1990s, we started fighting for renovation and transformation ahead of demolition at Betty Farm here in Montreal. It was not just a battle of the green sustainability, it was also about social activism, and we are very much inspired by artist and activist Martha Rossler. She wrote, "Housing has to be brought as not simply as a series of opportunities for profit." At Betty Farm, we developed collective infrastructure from a legal and technical perspective by attempting to embed it in the landscape and via a district energy system. The Central Community Gardens became the heart of the redevelopment and the social exchange platform for uniting the various stakeholders. And the district energy system was partially successful, but probably about a decade ahead of its time. The communal programming of the ground floor was a major success, and Benny Farm remains one of the largest, most affordable housing community redevelopment projects in Canada. One of the important things is thermal comfort, not just energy efficiency. And many of these lessons were shared in a publication with the Hussen Foundation in 2015 called Community Inspired Housing in Canada. We took these lessons learned and brought them to public forums like the Canadian Centre for Architecture, and we took them on to our next affordable housing project, Coteau Vert and Un Toit pour tous in Rosemont here in Montreal. This is a wonderful site, 155 units right next to the metro and the bicycle path. And it's designed around passive and active measures, including geothermal, future green roofs, potential solar panels, but also just landscape and simple clotheslines. We tried to spend a lot of time on the central courtyard instead of filling it in with cars, which is what the zoning required. It took us 6 months, but we were able to reduce it to 12 cars. And this was a major success because it allowed the space to be occupied by kids and people. And of course, the simple design, whether it's cross ventilation, natural materials, a play of form, and working with the local groups was the key of the heart to the whole project. We worked with some technical resources groups like Bâtir son Quartier. We did the monitoring of the project after the end, and it did attain 40% better than energy, but as it requires a lot of maintenance of a geothermal system. So with that, we started working towards Passive House, both on a private house here, where we're able to design an envelope that actually produces more energy than it takes, except if we ignore the fresh air component. And we then transferred it to our next affordable housing project, Co-op Bois-Hélène, where we looked at air tightness and training of our residents as some of the key factors going forward. So now to our current project, Place Griffintown, in the midst of design. It's about a 15-minute walk from downtown Montreal. You can see here, it's got a parking problem, which is the entire site at the moment. So it's a heat island problem. And the design itself attempts to address this by both providing wonderful historical context, because there's a long tradition of both wood and masonry in this neighborhood. So on the street, we're using masonry yard. Here you can see all of the units like Coteau Vert are cross-ventilated, a combination of 1, 2, and 3, and even 4-bedroom units on 4 different floors, all using wood construction. And as we move up, you can see that most of the large units are looking directly onto the courtyard. One of the key things is developing a little bit of privacy on the backyard in kind of the western garden. And you can see here there's a gap between the passerelle and the private balconies that allow us to feel a little bit more comfortable. And then again, there's a very advanced use of blocking the thermal bridging through a series of technologies, but maybe the most important one is still building 4 stories in wood. Here you can see the cross ventilation going right through the units. And really the key to this is having not just cross ventilation, not just a wonderful envelope, but also enough thermal mass. And so we started to take some lessons learned from Coteau Vert. We took our project as built, did a simulation, and found out that in the middle of winter, given the fact that we used double glazing at that time, it could last about 19 hours before it dips below 15 degrees Celsius. And this is because a big part of the overall efficiency of the envelope is with the windows. And if we were to ameliorate that envelope and have enough thermal mass, we definitely could have attained the 72-hour minimum. In the summertime, we achieve 13 hours, which is not perfect as well, even though we have cross ventilation, a combination of the envelope not being good enough and not having enough thermal mass in the wood construction. And so if we were to actually ameliorate both, we certainly can improve it by almost 3 times. And so our design is looking at a series of factors. We're looking at enough thermal mass, high enough envelope, excellent windows, and maybe overall garden in the introduction of a landscape. This will be critical for the neighbors as well as the people living in the project. So at LIFT, it's always been about finding the mass impact through the work and collaboration with the neighborhood, taking those lessons learned and sharing them across the country, which is, of course, the lecture today. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeanhy Shim and I'm an Associate Director and I lead the architecture team at Common. I'm really excited to be a part of this event and to be able to share about the Zibi project and talk about Common's role and also talk about how we are addressing the housing crisis at large through co-living design. And for those of you who are not familiar with Common, Common is a leading co-living residential brand, and we design, lease, and manage multifamily properties that really appeal to today's renters. 17,000 units signed and under development, and we are continuing to expand into 26 cities across the world, Ottawa being one of them, which is where the Zibi project is located. And we have been fortunate enough to have been working with Dream, who is the developer for this project and also the orchestrator of the Zibi master plan at large, and also Cone Architects, who is the architect of record on the project. So over the next few minutes, I'll be giving an overview of the Common Zibi project, give you a better sense of what co-living is, and talk about how we plan to address housing affordability through co-living. So as an overview, Common Zibi is part of this larger master plan that will expand across 34 acres of waterfront in the downtown cores of both Ottawa and Gatineau. And as you can see in this rendering on the left, the site is framed by bridges and the waterfront border. And this master plan can both cities and offer these stunning views of the falls and Parliament Hill that you see on the screen. The site is very unique and has a rich history as it's located at the first meeting place of Canada's founding nations. And while it has been blocked off from public access in the past, this redevelopment of this area will allow the locals and tourists to really enjoy the natural beauty that the site has to offer to the fullest. Common Zibi is one of the projects within the master plan, as you can see on the right, and it's a 25-story building that will include a little over 200 units with a mix of both co-living and traditional rental units, with nearly half of them being co-living beds. So by now, you might be asking, what is co-living? Co-living seems to have been a buzzy word for the last couple of years, and yet not everyone is aware of the true definition or may even have some misconceptions. So co-living today in simple is dense urban living made possible by the willingness of residents to share some of their spaces. And this diagram on the left shows a traditional one-bedroom apartment with a living room, kitchen, and bathroom. And on the right, it's a co-living apartment sharing the same exact space, but with 4 bedrooms instead. So in return, you get higher density and you achieve a different type of housing, which is what co-living is. When Common launched in 2015, the company was responding directly to the market that is based on these fundamental demographic trends, such as the wage not keeping up with the rent growth. And so over the last 60 years in the US, rental costs have dramatically outmatched renter income, causing this widening gap between demand and supply for affordable housing. And Canada has followed this trend in a similar manner. And so there is this major opportunity in addressing the affordability challenges facing households. And yet many luxury developers are chasing a small, very fixed segment of the rental market with above median income. But by offering market rate housing at affordable price points, the developers would actually be able to differentiate their product and attract an underserved audience, which is what Common will be bringing at Zibi for 170 co-living residents. And I think for too long, developers have been focused on building these elaborate, cavernous amenity spaces to justify ever higher rents. But as someone who has been renting in cities like New York and San Francisco over the last 10 years, and with my experience at Common so far, it's indicated to me that affordability is truly the best amenity after all. And so I'm beyond excited to see co-living reaching the Ottawa market to have it available for city residents in the future as well. So before I move on from this topic, it's probably worth briefly discussing how co-living actually provides affordability. So for co-living, we are always lowering rents by underwriting the co-living rent 20% lower than what's on the market. So for all projects, no matter what city, what market, first thing we look at is what is the market comp for a studio and what does 20% lower rent look like? And so as I mentioned earlier, we're able to do this through density design. So by designing a 3-bedroom co-living unit within the square footage of what otherwise would have been a traditional 2-bedroom unit, we can provide higher density, but that also allows lower rent. So now that we've addressed what co-living is, I wanted to share one of the co-living typologies we have at Common that's also being designed as Zippy on one of the co-living floors. It is an extra large suite, and it's meant to be shared by up to 15 people. And it works much like a mansion. Extra large suite is made up of 4 different apartments that range from 3 to 4 bedrooms each. And within each unit, there's a kitchenette, bathrooms at a 2-to-1 sharing ratio. And for Zippy in particular, the whole floor on level 2 has been dedicated to this extra large suite. And in addition to these 4 different apartments that can accommodate 14 residents specifically at Zippy, there's also the 700 square feet shared space that includes a large enough kitchen to allow cooking by multiple groups and some dining area and lounge area. This shared space is an intimate amenity space, really acting as an extension of one's living room for these 14 co-living residents within the extra large suite. And the space is really meant to foster a sense of community apartment. And at co-living, residents may opt into it for affordability, but end up staying for the community. And so at Zippy, we really strive to provide these spaces that would not only be activated, but also spaces where residents can be brought together, fostering a sense of community. And so zooming out at a building level at Common Zippy, these activated spaces would include an indoor gym with outdoor flexible space, a party lounge with access to a barbecue deck, and a co-working lounge. So really offering these larger spaces for the residents to socialize with one another. And zooming out even further at a district level, Common Zippy will be part of this master plan in a highly walkable neighborhood that's connected with these walking trails, cycling networks, cafes. Providing these larger gathering spaces outside the building has been made accessible because of savings from co-living that would have allowed these residents to live in this convenient and accessible location in Ottawa. So I realize co-living doesn't solve all issues for affordability, but it's definitely one of the options and a step closer to addressing the housing crisis at large. And I'm incredibly excited for Common Zippy to be one of our first co-living projects in Canada. Thank you.
Like other major cities across the country, the housing crisis, the lack of affordable housing, is a serious issue in Toronto. My name is Daniel Ling, and I'm a director and principal at Montgomery Eisen Architects. The project I'm going to show you involves the rapid delivery of 100 units of supportive housing over 2 urban sites within 10-kilometer radius of downtown. These are city-owned lands with access to public transit. Macy is about 10 kilometers east of downtown, and Harrison is about 4 kilometers west of downtown Toronto. This project is part of the Housing TO Action Plan, which is the city vision to provide a diverse range of housing, and this falls within the supportive transitional housing stream by providing permanent affordable rental housing with support services that will help people move out of the shelter system. Before the pandemic, the city's shelter system was already at capacity. Given the need for physical distancing, a real considerable strain has been put on the shelter system. To supplement the system, people are being housed in community centers and other buildings not intended for the purpose. And all over the city, people are resulting in sex under the highway. This combination of the housing crisis with the pandemic and the approaching winter is really the perfect storm. Calling this a crisis is an understatement.
So in April of this year, when our team was asked to design the first 100 homes, approved by Council for Rapid Delivery, we jumped at the chance to be able to help. The plan is to deliver 56 homes in Harrison Avenue and 44 homes in Macy Avenue. And modular construction was selected in order to have the two buildings ready to be occupied before the end of the year 2020. The sites are quite compact, both suitable for the modular system, with the Macy site about 120 feet by 220 and the Harrison site about 150 feet by 150. The building exterior is an expression of the modular design. The grid on the elevation breaks down the scale of the building, but also serves as a purpose of allowing the joints of the modules to be completed on site once craned into place. The floor plan is simple. In addition to the apartment units, there's also shared dining, kitchen, laundry, staff and support spaces on the ground floor. Now, typically when you think of modular construction, it has a connotation of being industrial and perhaps institutional. So it was important for us to provide a design that is appropriate for the neighborhood in terms of both scale and identity. So the exterior material, the siding selected, gives it a residential quality, and natural wood, in this case solid cedar, was introduced as an accent, particularly at the pedestrian level, to give the building a welcoming, tactile quality and human scale. The typical unit is about 300 square feet. There's a studio with a kitchen, bathroom, including a shower. Both the standard unit as well as the barrier-free unit was designed to fit into the typical module. Compact is also quite functional, with a large window that's operable, bringing in lots of natural daylight and air. For us, this is more than just providing housing to get people off the streets. It is also about city building. There's a mandate and a real need to do this fast. But as architects, we also need to provide something that's permanent, something that lasts, that is timeless, something that contributes to the neighborhood and the city fabric. So let's have a walk through the two sites. The first one you see here is at 11 Macy Avenue. The site actually has a public connection in the form of a landscape path that connects the east to the west, and it forms a through-block connection, providing access to an adjacent public park. The east side of the site actually rises about a story higher, which provides opportunity to create a sunken courtyard to be used by the residents in the homes. It creates a bit of intimacy, but also privacy to the adjacent neighbors. Sunken courtyard provides outdoor amenities, barbecue, picnic tables. And here's the typical unit. And at 150 Harrison, while the design is very similar to Macy, the experience of the building from the street is quite different. The orientation of the building is such that the long side of the building is facing the public street, with the narrow end facing a public park. A darker siding was selected at the end of the building to both allow the building to recede as a backdrop for the park, but also to respond to some of the adjacent contacts ending. This combined with the wood accents, the cedar slats, really gives the building a tactile quality. So why was modular construction suitable for this project? What did the project gain from it? What is innovative about this modular design? If I have to summarize it in 2 words, it would be speed and simplicity. These modules are very simple wood frame construction with the systems designed as an all-electric heating and cooling system with no gas use. So the project really has quite a low carbon footprint. One of the key advantages is quality control, with most of the work done in the shop and minimal site labor. Now, each module is approximately 12 foot 6 wide by 65 long and 50. Once on site, the modules can be craned directly from the tractor trailer into its final position. So the 36 modules on the Macy site that forms the 56 unit only took 2 weeks duration to assemble. These are very simple, self-supporting structures, so there's no support structural system, and there's no parking on this project, so there's minimal foundation work. There's just bicycle parking. And unlike your typical condos, these are not glass buildings. We've got highly insulated walls with high-performance window, so they're very energy efficient. These are also fairly compact development and can fit into infill sites. In the case of Macy Avenue, the building footprint is under 900 square meters. So if you look at the site utilization, what is equivalent of an area for 6 single-family houses, 56 homes. So what have we learned on this project that would be applicable to other projects? As most of you may know, in response to the current COVID-19 situation, the government recently announced the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is a $1 billion program to create up to 3,000 affordable housing units for housing types such as rental, transitional, supportive, or senior housing. Now, the requirement for this is that it has to be rapid delivery, achieving occupancy within 12 months from design to completion, and it has to be modular construction. In the case of the Macy and Harrison projects I just showed you, we were able to achieve that within 7 to 8 months. We started the design in May, and in the case of Macy, it will be completed at the end of November 2020, with Harrison several weeks after. So what we have learned from this project, that it is indeed possible to deliver while also creating something that has a low carbon footprint and that is energy efficient, and something that contributes to the city fabric. And in the process of doing so, we hope to be able to make good design accessible to everyone.
My name is Lawrence Brawl. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Trinity Place Foundation.
And I'm Sharon Mkisi, the Director of Care for the Templemont Project.
We're here today to talk to you about the care facility that we're developing in Temple in Northeast Calgary. It's a unique facility, and we're excited to tell you about some of its innovative features. Really, the genesis of this project starts back in 2005. At that point in time, the situation in Calgary was pretty dire. Older adults had trouble finding a physician. Older adults had trouble getting access to health care. Marginalized, they may not have all the resources, perhaps don't speak that well for themselves, might encounter even additional challenges. So back in 2005, our organization began to realize that there was something far more important that we needed to do. We needed to be able to offer a care facility in the community that would respond to those needs. And so I approached one of the people from the healthcare service at the time, and it began to, I guess, sow the seed for a better and bigger project, such as Templemont, where we would meet all of the Alberta healthcare requirements and provide equal access to quality healthcare in a timely manner for a population that's been marginalized. At the time, what I did is I went and toured around, and I went to Vancouver. I toured some facilities there and got some ideas. I went to Edmonton, and I did a fair bit of research to figure out, well, what do we need to do? How does this thing need to look like? And so that began that process of design and development that's really been ongoing for 15 years.
One of the things that's unique is that this project is for, or this residence is for, the most marginalized, the people with the least voice in society, those with mental health and addictions. So it will be a beautiful facility. It's intended to be warm and welcoming and safe for these folks who have not had housing, often many times in the past. We purchased the land from a church that was struggling financially on the site. We've partnered with them to build a facility that will include a meeting place for them, for their clergy, as well as being part of the facility and inviting the community in as well. We're working together with them to create a space where they feel welcome, the community around feels welcome, and we're hoping we will also be a welcomed part of the community.
This facility, Alberta at least, we had fallen into a pattern of larger and larger care facilities that really had an institutional look and feel. This will be the very first facility of its type, a continuing care facility called a designated assisted living facility that's designed to a different standard. It's called B3, which is a building occupancy code designation for a less formal, less institutional style of building. It's also much smaller. In our environment here in Calgary, we've seen care facilities that are actually over 350 beds. This is 70, remarkably different. So a different size and scale. We hope much more approachable from a community perspective. You're not going up to your home that looks like a hospital structure. You're going to what looks like an apartment block. Inside, there's also additional unique features. And in this post-pandemic era, we know that we have to take into account some hazards, some risks. In fact, all you healthcare folks will like that. That'll have to be taken into account. So rather than having a common eating area where we have 70 people all eating at the same time, we have 6 households with no more than 12 people per household. Each household has a large common area where meals will be served, recreation can happen, there'll be a television, there'll be lounge chairs, it'll be a relaxing place to hang out and visit. In addition to that, there are multi-purpose areas, a recreation area, hobby shop, hobby space, even a smoking room for people to use, and an exercise area. So there'll be the option of moving from a more private space, a more of a household space, to a more common space, a recreational space, and all the way to this large multi-purpose hall where there could be large group activities planned. The design of the facility is also highly energy efficient. In order to meet CMHC's requirements for a high-performance building, we've installed such innovative features as a 50 kVA solar panel array on the top of the roof of Building A. That means that we're going to generate electricity hopefully year-round, and that electricity will go into the grid, and our electricity bill at the end of the month will be just a little bit smaller because we'll be able to deduct some of the energy that we contribute to the grid.
So in addition to the care facility that we've been describing, there's also a 50-unit seniors affordable housing apartment building right beside it.
You know, we thought, why do we need to segregate care facilities from other parts of the community? Why not stick an apartment building right on the same site? They actually share a parkade. That means that people are going to be encouraged to interact. We hope that events that occur in the multipurpose hall will be enjoyed by the people that live in the independent apartments. One of the things that seniors housing unfortunately has fallen into is this sense that in order to be protective of seniors, to segregate seniors. That concept, I believe, is breaking down. People don't benefit by segregation. They are overwhelmed sometimes by isolation. So we want to create a facility that allows for a free flow of movement back and forth and to develop relationships.
We're excited to be able to do this facility in partnership with Alberta Health Services. While Trinity is a housing management organization, partnering with AHS brings a whole new arm of support to the residents that will be living in this facility. It's a continuing care model, and we are really looking forward to being able to provide safe, supportive housing for our residents, together with the healthcare services that they will need in that facility.
The key point I want to stress here to you all, I know you're interested in innovations in healthcare, it's really innovations in partnership, innovations in collaboration, reaching beyond yourself, beyond your boundary, your border, and reaching across to another service provider that's looking for a partner. Find those partners, nurture that relationship, and see where it takes you.
We're excited about this possibility. We're excited about what's coming, the things we've talked about and shared, and just the way forward. Based on the research we've seen to date, the things that we've been experiencing in some of our other housing facilities, we really do believe this is the way forward.
We invite you to visit. We invite you to come by and look at this 120-unit facility in Northeast Calgary to see at least our vision for how community development can really work.
And we'd really like to thank our partners and stakeholders in this endeavor: Alberta Health Services, CMHC.
The province of Alberta contributed $17.1 million to this project. But most importantly, we want to thank all those who participated in the Resolve campaign. In Calgary, between 2013 and 2017, Calgarians $71 million for affordable by that, with the $4 million contribution that we were able to gather. Finally, we'd like to thank the City of Calgary. The City of Calgary created a pathway for us to navigate our development through the planning process. As you probably realize, planning can be a complicated process. And they said, the city said, if it's an affordable housing project, we're going to help you navigate that. Thank you for spending your time with us on this webinar and giving us the opportunity to tell you about our project. As you can see, we're pretty excited about it. If you want to learn more about Trinity Place Foundation of Alberta, go to our website, www.tpfa.ca. There you'll see some photos of the project as it moves its way through completion. And as I say, if you're in Calgary and you want to see the facility, Sharon would happy to give you a tour.
Yes, we welcome you, open arms. Thank you for your time.
Wow, those projects were amazing, so inspiring. My head is spinning with all these new ideas. And welcome, everyone. Thank you to Nancy Singer and Kehilla for putting on this great event. And thank you to Minister Hussen for your opening remarks. And welcome, everyone, for literally from coast to coast. I've been trying to see on the chat. Thank you for attending. Thank you. Many of you have been sharing kind of who you are and where you're joining us from. And we are literally from coast to coast. So this is amazing. So before we move on to our panelists, we do have one more project to highlight, and that is a CENOC development in Vancouver. And you can see it up on the screen. Unfortunately, we were unable to get their video in time. It's an exciting new use and cultural development planned for 6,000 apartments in 11 high-rise buildings. This project is being developed by the Squamish First Nations on part of their unceded territorial lands, and it will benefit their community for many generations to come. So we encourage you to learn more about this new development by going to their website, and you can see the URL up on the screen. So that's unfortunately the last project we weren't able to get the video in time, but we've got lots of exciting stuff to talk about. So I guess we'll start with introducing our panel. There we go, we can see the slide of our panels. So again, our panelists, as you know, are literally joining us from coast to coast to talk about their projects today. And starting from the East Coast, we have Rodney Small. He's the director at One North End, which is the project in Halifax that we saw that's focusing on inclusive design. We have Daniel Pearl, co-founding partner at L'Oeuf Architecte, to speak about future-proofing for climate change at Place Griffintown in Montreal. We have Heon Shik Common, working on the exciting co-living spaces in Ottawa. We have Daniel Ling, director and principal at Montgomery Sizem Architects, who's designing the modular supportive housing for our homeless in Toronto. And we have Lawrence Brawl, CEO of Trinity Place Foundation of Alberta, here to talk about his exciting Aging in Place project. Now, before we get started, a quick housekeeping note. If you have any questions during the discussion, please submit them in the Q&A with your email and to whom the question is directed to, and we will compile all the questions and provide them to our project leads and panelists to respond to after the event. Also, I've noticed that there's been some discussion in the chat box, so please continue to share your thoughts in the chat box. If you also want to respond to some of the questions that we'll be asking our panelists, please feel free to do so. This webinar is being recorded, and the chat session will also be recorded as well and shared. So like I said, some exciting stuff that I'd love to read after because I can't time. So let me start with the first question, which is actually a two-parter to our panelists. What was the inspiration or catalyst for your project? And what is the aspiration or desired impact for your project? So why don't we start with Roger?
So it's Rodney. And
oh, sorry, Rodney.
No worries whatsoever, Jeanhy. But the inspiration behind our project came from what is known as the African Nova Scotian Social Innovation Employment Lab. It was an initiative that came about through the province's no poverty strategy. And then it is a collective impact strategy led by the community, supported by our governments. And we brought in small and medium-sized businesses, large corporations, and nonprofits alike to the employment gap for African Nova Scotians between the ages of 18 and 35 compared to all other Nova Scotians within that age category. Now, as far as the aspirations, well, the aspirations are to close that gap. So to really support the lab in the end goal of closing the employment gap, which has haunted our province for generations.
Thank you. Daniel Pearl?
Yes, hello, can you see me? Perfect. So the inspiration for our project, well, it started off actually with the City of Montreal. They hired our firm about a year ago to help them study how they can improve their Accès Logis et Nouveau Climat program. And we were fortunate enough to win this offer of service where we looked at how can low-tech, highly resilient, affordable housing strategies be possible within even the public tendering process. And this approach matches our clients' interests on many levels because they can partake in the design, the operation, the future training of the residents, and the energy savings as well, while getting the thermal comfort, and really be part of a demonstration project status, which means that they can actually share a lot of the lessons learned. We ended up also trying to minimize the energy through very, very simple energy systems related to preconditioning of fresh air, but really to minimize those expenses and really spend most of the money, if not all, really towards the high performance envelope. In our most recent projects, we've shown that high performance envelopes is the safest, most consistent strategy to provide thermal comfort, energy saving. And really the mission of the project, really, I guess we want to prove the cost affordability, the passive habitability resilience performance of the envelope, and the comprehensive documentation from post-occupancy evaluation, sharing lessons learned, etc., with the rest of the country. We have an affordable housing crisis. We need to adopt this new construction strategy to renovation and rehabilitation as well. We can't just stop here with new construction. So we need to get case studies out there built as quickly as possible. One of the key things to do is also involving our client, including research at university, the design team, and the whole process. But in the end, I would define success as having our residents act as ambassadors and champions going forward. They would be the ultimate sign of success. I think you're on mute, Jeanhy.
Yep, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I should know that by now. Thank you, Daniel. With us, your inspiration and aspiration.
Sure. So for common, we recognize that cities throughout the world are facing similar housing challenges. So, we continue to see urban populations rising, but housing supply simply isn't keeping up. And so with Dream and Zibi Development, we really found a fantastic partner who has a long-standing history in Canada, who also had this unique location, as you guys saw, for us to be able to bring co-living to Ottawa. And so for us, the inspiration was really based on bringing people who may otherwise not be able to be in the center of urban cities and neighborhoods, and really be able to provide a great way for these people to live affordably. And as for the aspiration, the whole waterfront Zibi development will be home to over 5,000 people and hopefully create 6,000 jobs when it's completed. So my hope for this project would be that, with the mix of affordable co-live, that this development would truly become a diverse and vibrant community and really become a city within a city with access to both indoor and outdoor spaces where people can make meaningful connections and really make it their own and their home.
Wonderful. Next we have Daniel Ling.
Hi there. Looks like the host has disabled my videos, only have audio at the moment. But I can go ahead with just audio if you like.
I guess, yes. Igor, are you able to enable the Daniel's video? Okay, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and
Yeah, no problem, I will. So first question, what was the catalyst? I think that's pretty straightforward. Some of that I covered on the housing crisis and the lack of affordable housing, as well as more specifically the challenge of the capacity of the shelter system. And with the current COVID-19, the modular housing solution really lends itself to this necessity to create housing very quickly. Oh, there we go. And then in terms of the second part of the question, what is the aspiration? I guess there's two things. Firstly, as a practice, we really work hard to work with certain constraints, whether it's schedule or budget, to find the right design opportunities. And in this case, the constraint is how do we deliver housing very quickly using modular construction? So I think the opportunity really is, can we evolve and reinvent modular housing? The preconceived notion that these things are industrial containers, how do we make these buildings, modular buildings with a human touch, and introduce natural material, and how do we make these buildings contribute to the city fabric? I guess the second part would be, to be able to make a difference, to transform the lives of these individuals through design. And the main objective of these projects was to help people experiencing homelessness, to give them a home. But I think we like to be able to do a bit more than that with design, to not just to provide a home or the physical needs, but perhaps through design, materiality, quality of life, sense of place, to give them a sense of dignity, a sense of belonging, and a sense of community. That would be the success of the project, I think. Thank you.
Wonderful. And last but not least, we have Lawrence. Would you like to tell us a bit more about your project?
Thanks, Jeannie. It's my pleasure. Our inspiration for the Templemont project was really another facility that we developed in 2005 called Peter Coyle Place. It's a facility designed on a harm reduction model of care, and it was intended to offer permanent supportive housing for older adults who had exhausted their housing options in the city. What it didn't have, and what Templemont now has, is a integrated healthcare facility and services. And so we make do at Peter Coyle Place with visiting physician and visiting supports, but we don't have the same level of integration. So in a sense, if you want to compare it to high school, Peter Coyle Place might be sort of like the junior high version, and then Templemont might be the high school version, in the sense that we've matured a little bit over time. We've also pleased that in the course of the last 15 years, we've attracted a lot of interest in the academic community who want to understand why and how Peter Coyle Place works. And so we've applied some of that learning as well into the design of Templemont. Our aspirations are really two of them, really. One is to challenge what does conventional seniors housing look like? I think we want to, at least in Alberta, move away from this highly institutionalized form that has become so popular and driven, I think, by the regulation and the environment that we operate within. So we want to model something a little bit smaller, a little more effective, a little more community-oriented. But the main thing is we want to demonstrate that it's possible to enhance the quality of life of individuals who may have had lots of uncertainties in their life due to the conditions and situation they find themselves in, and enable them to access healthcare in a timely manner to improve that quality of life. So our aspiration is to build on the success of Peter Coyle, to demonstrate a model of care that really works well, and to be part of a research endeavor that will go on now for the next 5 years to gather data about our impact and our effectiveness, so that we can continue to learn and inspire.
Thank you, Lawrence. Wow, we've got 5 amazing examples, which I'd love to see, repeated throughout the country. We've got, one North End and Halifax, really targeting and dealing with marginalized youth, racialized youth. Place Griffintown in Montreal, showing us that maybe we don't need high-tech solutions to achieve sustainability goals. Commons EB in Ottawa, a new model where we can achieve rents at 20 to 30% below market rate. We've got the modular housing solution in Toronto, which is really addressing the crisis we have with a homeless population in particular, people who are precariously housed. And then in Temple Mount in Calgary, it's wonderful to see a different approach to seniors living. Just because you're getting older, that doesn't mean you don't want and need all the same things that we all need at all ages of our lives. So it's nice to see a fresh approach there. I know we could probably talk for hours more about all of these projects, but we have a couple wrap up just to also be mindful of time. We'll do them as kind of a quick fire round, but it looks like we have a little bit of time as well for people to elaborate a bit. And again, for people in the audience, if you'd like to answer any of the questions that our panelists have been to share, your examples, I'm sure there are lots of examples across the country. It would be great to kind of read about those as well. So the first question is, what is the biggest lesson learned in making your project happen that you want others who are following in your footsteps to also know? So we'll start again from the East Coast with Rodney.
So I think for us, the most valuable lesson that we've learned is to kind of stay away from the rhetoric and really focus on creating what we labeled as brave spaces. And when I say brave spaces, we hear so much about a safe space. And when we go into, these wonderful engagements where, those vulnerable voices can really fall back, and as kept. That's a safe space, right? And we're going to make sure that they're all right in that safe space. But when we create a brave space, that vulnerable voice that never gets a platform to actually be heard, all of a sudden has the courage to speak up and share what's in their mind and ultimately within their heart. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for creating those type of healthy spaces, because we find that's where we're going to develop the necessary relationships in order to obviously bring together people to co-create. That's what it comes down to co-create. So for us, it's really creating those safe, brave spaces and developing those relationships in a meaningful way.
It's so true.
Is just the one question right for now?
Yeah, just one for now. Yeah, then we'll go around. I agree, Rodney, right? It's beyond creating safe spaces, because what about the people who aren't the extroverts, even in community consultation, right? The people who don't always speak up, but have something to say, and it's really important to know what they're thinking as well. So I love how you're creating these kind of brave spaces as well. Love that term, because it isn't just about hearing from all the extroverts all the time, right? It's we need to include, especially people who have been historically very marginalized, racialized community in particular. It's I love that you guys are incorporating that into the design. That's wonderful.
Very important for us, considering the fact that displacement in Halifax, as specifically anti-Black displacement, it has been a long part of our history. Definitely had to move forward in a way that we paid attention to the art of hosting. So thank you very much. I'll pass it on to Daniel.
Great. Next, Daniel Pearl.
Yeah, first of all, Rodney, thank you very much. Co-creation for us is at the heart of all of our work too, especially when it comes to risk and innovation. It can't happen by the will of one consultant or one stakeholder. Really, we use what's called integrated design process, IDP, where really we promote team building, and through this shared vision that we can have significant innovation. An example, I've seen some of the comments today. There's some people from the Baba Yaga's organization. I had the opportunity and honor to meet Thérèse Claire when she was in Montreal, the founder in France of Baba Yaga movement in the world. And really, she was about senior women who don't want to be stuck in an institution, want to redevelop a whole model of how they live together. And it was through that whole vision that she got everybody around that the project of Baba Yaga's actually took place. So for me, really, the key innovation is getting a team spirit to share the risk. Often right now, it's on the consultants alone. You have to get the client involved, the builder involved, the city involved. Everybody has to support the process if we want innovation and affordable.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, it's important, right? If we get enough people together, then the politicians and everyone else will listen, right? So it's getting the power of hearing lots of voices. That's wonderful to see that happening in Montreal. Heian, would you like to share with us in Ottawa kind of important lessons learned?
Sure.
I think with every new market that Common expands to, especially outside the US market, there's a bit of a learning and conversations that need to happen in terms of how the city may interpret co-living in the eyes of the building code or maybe the zoning regulation. And so I think it's probably good for others to know that might want to follow in a similar footstep with co-living is actually no different than a traditional multifamily design from a building code perspective. And that's certainly the case for US project and also for the city project. And I think I might actually just add another one that's a little bit different, but I think it's very relevant with what's going on with the pandemic, which is, I think when COVID first broke out, how is co-living going to survive and how is it going to work? But I think what we actually have seen in the past months is that community is something that people are really craving and is ever more important in the midst of this pandemic. And I think co-living is achieving that and sort of providing that sense of community for people.
Thank you, Hia, and I think that's important. Yes, just because we're in the pandemic, that doesn't mean people don't want to still be together. Actually, we want it, crave it even more, don't we? Next, we'll hear from Daniel Ling. Again, the question is, what's the biggest lesson learned that others who want to do what you're doing should know?
Yeah, I guess what we've learned is if you have to deliver housing very fast, one thing that we felt that is quite important is really keeping it simple, keep the design simple. Think about how can we do more with less. There's a real elegance in simplicity. I mean, there's a saying we do, and it means generosity of ends. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that in your project you talked about, I mean, the simplicity, yet it still fits into its residential context. It's still, looks like a beautiful place to live. We did have a question, I think, in the chat, or someone made a comment about, would love to see more color in these projects. So I don't know if that's just a rendering thing. And I imagine once the trees are all in bloom, we'll add color, but I thought that was an interesting comment as well, right? We could probably use a lot more color in our cities everywhere. And
yeah,
last,
that's true.
So Lawrence, would you like to share with us what was the biggest lesson learned that someone trying to do what you're doing should know?
I guess we learned that system change takes time. It takes a lot of patience, and really what you need to do is cultivate relationships with important system players. In our case, the healthcare provider for the province is a major player, a budget of over $20 billion a year. It doesn't have a lot of clout. And yet, you know, there is a way to effect system change by developing relationships and credibility over time. One of the ways we did that is by sort of enabling the research community to help us and to provide data that bolstered our arguments. I think it's an essential piece that not-for-profits sometimes neglect. If you want to build a case, it's always helpful to have information and data. And so for the last 6 years, our organization has built that capacity within our entire staff, and we employ some technology, some software that help us focus on what's working well and what do we need to do more of, and what's maybe something that isn't working so well that we either change or we stop doing, and that sort of thing. So system change takes time, it takes credibility, and also it's a complicated process. I have to say, when I, as in my role, trying to navigate with major system players, they have their own agendas, their own speed, and I think to hang in, keep the conversation going. Don't back away from the difficult conversations. You know, we're promoting concepts like harm reduction, which sometimes governments find unpopular. We're incorporating peer support workers to enable folks to feel like they're part of this co-creation of space. I love that concept of brave space. I think it really is evocative of what we're trying to achieve as well. You know, for too long, we've been saying that here's a marginalized population. Well, we continually marginalize them by describing them that way. We want to really change the script here. We want to create a safe space, a quality space, a brave space where we can hear from folks and respond to them and their needs where they're at.
That's some great advice, relationships. Data is always good. We all know that we have an affordable housing crisis, but if you've got some data to back you up, that always helps. It's complicated out there. And am I recalling correctly, Lawrence? You said this project, Temple Mount, was over a decade in the making, or was it 15 years, or did I miss?
Our first facility was built in 2005, and we used a lot of the ideas from that facility in Temple Mount. I would say it's the junior high version, and the Temple Mount is the high school version of what we're trying to achieve. But we're incorporating harm reduction, peers, and integrating medical care and medical supports into that model for a population of older adults, often who have been homeless, chronically homeless, and experience chronic mental illness and chronic addictions.
Well, hopefully, I know we've got, I don't know if the minister's still on the line, we've got our MP Adam Vaughan, we've got a bunch of mayors and other people on this. So hopefully, in hearing all of this, we can help kind of cut down on the time part and the complicated and push forward some of these ideas faster. So one last question.
That would be a great outcome for this this consultation in and of itself.
So one last question before we wrap up. And who was your biggest ally to make your projects happen? If you could think of kind of one person or one group, and we'll start this time. Lawrence, you're back on. We'll start from the West Coast, and we'll go back to the East Coast.
Well, our biggest ally turned out to be the medical community. There are lots of physicians out there who used to phone me and say, "What in the world? I can't get this person out of this hospital scenario, and we can't discharge this person. And what do you have that we can use to help us deal with our bed crunch problem?" And so a variety of physicians have expressed continual support for our project, and in fact have become the champions. And that moved into the University of Calgary. Dr. Laura Nixon is one I would single out, who is an assistant professor in the faculty in the O'Brien School of Medicine, Cummins School of Medicine. She's been fantastic champion, and she's a physician that works with us 2 days a week. So you need those champions to really advance your project support, and other physicians as well. I could name a few more, but you know, I think what we sometimes forget is that doctors are as frustrated as we are sometimes by the systemic barriers that tie their hands and prevent them from doing certain things when it's really necessary. Physicians have been our quiet champions, you know, just pounding away and saying, you got to find a way to get these guys into the ground and get them building. This is important stuff. So
that's interesting. It's kind of, you think you're in development, but it's kind of an unexpected ally. Interesting. Daniel, who is your biggest ally to make your project happen?
Yeah, there was actually two on those projects. The first is NRB, who was the design builder. So it was great collaboration. They were the modular fabricator that made these projects happen so quickly. The second is Creatio. They provide management and oversight, and they really made the project happen. And they work with City to make sure it happened very quickly in order for us to design and build these things in 8 months.
Heian, who is your biggest ally?
Yeah, I think with Common being the operator and the designer on the project, it would definitely have to be Dream. As I mentioned before, this was Common's first project in Canada, certainly our first international project at the time. So it was really great that Dream shared our vision for wanting to provide affordable housing and partner with us in bringing co-living to Ottawa.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, in Montreal, we have a multi-headed client. We have city officials at Montreal, so Andre and Rebecca, within the rules of a city housing program, have done their best. We've had demonstration money coming from the province, so Nathalie at the SHQ helped out. We have a technical resource group, Bettelson Cartier, Simon, Amin, Liam, and amazing. And maybe our client reps from SOCAM, really, Muriel, has been very passionate about this. So literally, in Montreal, in our process, we need all these people coming together to make this happen. And we have it so far.
Wonderful. And last word to you, Rodney, who is your biggest ally making your project come to life?
So our biggest ally, I feel, was the African Nova Scotian community. So with the African Nova Scotian Social Innovation Lab, we started with the Community Advisory Committee. What I will say is that grew into what has become known as the multi-collaborator. And we use that word purposely because some people do take offense to the word stakeholder, and I want to put that out there. So we did adapt and use the word multi-collaborator advisory committee, because we knew that at the end of the day, even though African Nova Scotian at the forefront of the high unemployment rates and the displacement that has been taking place. At the end of the day, this was a provincial problem that required all hands on deck in order to solve it. So overall, our ally would be the multi-collaborator advisory committee.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Being mindful of time, we need to move on, but thank you, all of you, for sharing, talking about your projects, for your wonderful videos, sharing your insights today. I wish we could continue on. Just a quick, again, housekeeping note, if you do have questions, please continue to post them in the Q&A, and we'll endeavor to get them replied to by our panelists. And now we need to move on. I'd like to introduce Brenda Eisen, who's a board member of Kehilla.
It has been incredibly enlightening to learn and the way that each of these project teams took important social issues from their respective cities and combined them with the affordable housing crisis to transform their communities. Now more than ever, this is an important issue in all of our communities, and Kehilla is here to provide rental assistance and affordable housing solutions. If you'd like to contribute to this cause, we would really appreciate your support. Your donations, no matter how big or small, are a tremendous help in all of Kehilla's efforts. Thank you to Minister Hussen, Jeanhy Shim, all our sponsors, influencers, the School of Cities for hosting, and U of T's technical support. Of particular note are the small Kehilla team, staff, consultants, and board volunteers who put this event together. We may be a small agency, but we do have a loud voice. Please stay on for a brief video from Don Ellis and important information from CMHC on resources and funding to help you build your own affordable projects. I was overwhelmed looking at the names and organizations of participants in the chat, and we would be honored to showcase some of your projects at our future events. Thank you.
Elliston Community Builders is Elliston's dedicated affordable housing team. What we felt was necessary was to have a small group of individuals that know the Elliston process and approach to specific projects that have social outcomes, and to have those people lead projects to ensure that the client gets everything that Elliston has to offer.
Bringing our expertise in construction and financial, or to help municipalities move from the initial stages very early on all the way to actually completing the asset and bringing it into the market to serve Canadians that need it the most.
Affordable housing, attainable housing is a crucial need across Canada. It's something that's really prevalent from coast to coast to coast. People can't afford to live where they work, so putting together housing that services everyone is kind of a duty across both the public and private sector, and that's what Elliston's bringing to the table.
In our area, in the Edmonton region, we have a lot of nonprofits here that are active in developing affordable and supportive housing. I have a lot of Indigenous communities that are also involved in the development of housing, and the offering from Elliston Capital's Community Builders team is to really support them in achieving their outcomes.
As we all know, there are a lot of challenges as it comes to housing, especially Nunavut, but across many of the territories. And so by having Nick's group at Community Builders and what I do as a remote project manager, we meld very well together to be able to deliver these types of projects.
It's so important that sustainability is something that is accessible for everyone in our community and at every economic level among diverse communities as well. You know, we really bring that ethos to the work we're doing here at Elliston. It doesn't matter the project or the budget, sustainability requirements and high performance standards are always important and are always going to drive value.
Since we're fully integrated on our side, we're able to keep them up to speed with every step of the way in terms of where their development's going, and really be able to give them a lot more of a firm understanding of how their development's progressing and ultimately how it's going to meet that overall social need.
And once all of those individual skill set and expertise started to own there was kind of an organic, really organic evolution in trying to combine those services to create another form of product offering within the industry.
So our base design came about through noticing that in the market there was a constant ask for, is there a starting point that exists in order to help us bring affordable housing and transitional housing units in the market quicker?
We put together a design that brought together our state-of-the-art modular technology, our expertise in conventional construction, and brought together kind of the highest standards of accessibility, energy efficiency, greenhouse gas emissions, and that sort of thing.
It takes those base requirements, makes it into a very livable design that is easily be able to be repeated, so it saves our developers, developer clients on the design side. It enables projects to be accelerated and also executed as efficiently and cost effectively as possible. In the last 2 years, we've acquired and set up a 300,000 square feet manufacturing facility in Stony Creek, just outside Hamilton, with an ability to produce 1 million square feet of construction per year and with 7 production lines.
I'm super excited. I feel like we put a team together that brings the sensitivity and the thoughtfulness that Elliston has always brought to assets that serve social outcomes, from the first schools that we worked on in the 1950s in London, Ontario, where Elliston started, to the most recent hospital and courthouse that we built, serving communities with critical assets, listening, which is an incredibly important part of our process, while having a center of excellence with primary points of contact for our clients, for them to know that they have access to every single facet that makes Elliston a unique company in the way that we approach things on a holistic turnkey basis. I think that it's, and the opportunities have already started to present themselves, and I just can't wait for the next, 3, 5, 10 years to come.